social distance, because the best way to prevent yourself from getting long-term symptoms is actually to prevent yourself from getting COVID in the first place.
As for Reina, she says she's slowly turning the corner and soaking up precious time with her family. What gives you hope?
Research. Maybe we can get rid of this, and then my kids keep me going. My husband thinks I'm spoiling them, but I'm just making up for it. So.
My message is that just keep your faith, and look for motivation in your loved ones, and hopefully
Mes amis algériens sont francophones.
Ariel Reshef, ABC News, New York.
Il sait jouer de tous les instruments.
Turn the corner. Thanks to Ariel for that. And now to the transition stonewall from the Trump administration tonight. President-elect Biden warning that this delay could in turn slow down distribution of the vaccine. Our Jonathan Karl reports.
Today, President-elect Biden warned President Trump's refusal to begin the transition process threatens to delay
Il m'a dit, ici, les loyers sont très chers.
And distribute a vaccine.
There's a whole lot of things that are we just don't have available to us. Which unless it's made available soon, we're going to be behind by weeks or months.
Today, Biden heard emotional stories from frontline workers who described a lack of supplies and testing.
Do you know that I have not been tested yet, and I have been on the front lines in the ICU since February?
You're kidding me.
No.
Some Republicans are calling on the president to, at the very least, give President-elect Biden access to briefings. But most Republicans in Congress remain silently on the sidelines. For his part, the president has said nothing about the alarming surge in coronavirus cases and hospitalizations across the country. His Twitter feed has been dominated by baseless tweets, insisting that he won the election and that there is voter fraud all over the country. That's just not true. The president's legal team has been losing over and over again, failing to offer any credible evidence to back up the president's allegations. The Trump team has lost or withdrawn 14 separate lawsuits. In Michigan, where Biden beat Trump by more than 150 votes, 2 Republican officials in Wayne County briefly refused to certify the election, a move that would have tossed out all votes in the city of Detroit. That prompted an angry public outcry, including on a public forum over Zoom.
You talked about not certifying Detroit, even though you acknowledged that Livonia, a city, by the way, I know you know is 95% white, had bigger variances than Detroit, which is 80% black. We understand. Just know when you try to sleep tonight, the law isn't on your side, history won't be on your side, your conscience will not be on your side, and Lord knows, when you go to meet your maker, your soul is going to be very, very warm.
The 2 Republicans quickly backed down and certified the election results. The simple truth, there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. As Christopher Krebs, the top cybersecurity official at the Department of Homeland Security, said last week, quote, the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. For that, he was fired. The president tweeting overnight that Krebs had been terminated effective immediately.
Right, and many of us don't know exactly what to call this new normal. Jonathan Karl joins us now. John, so day after day, we're starting to hear more concerns from Republicans in Congress, but is there anything that they can do in order to get the Trump administration to cooperate with the president-elect?
Well, I mean, I suppose what we could see, what might have an impact, possibly, is if you have more Republicans coming out and actually saying yes, recognizing the fact Joe Biden is the president-elect and therefore should be given these briefings. But it's ultimately an action that has to be taken by the Trump administration. Kamala Harris, however, is still a United States Senator, and she is still a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So in that capacity, she can't have access to intelligence briefings as a senator.
And John, word today, the Trump campaign has paid for a partial recount in Wisconsin. As you mentioned, there is no evidence of any widespread voter fraud anywhere, and we've seen legal defeat after defeat. From your sources, are they telling you what the mood is inside the White House? Do people close to the president admit at this point that it's over?
I mean, that has been my sense, actually, Lindsay, for some time, and yet we still keep slogging along because the president himself is not ready to give up this fight. I thought the Wisconsin move was an interesting one because Wisconsin's a state where, when the margin is as close as it was, the Trump campaign is in its rights to ask for a recount, but they must pay for that recount. So they decided against doing a full statewide recount, which would have cost the campaign $8 million. Instead, they're doing this partial recount just of the two most heavily populated counties. By the way, counties that just so happen to be heavily Democratic. But look, my sense almost across the board, talking to the president's advisors, is that they know, as well as everybody else, that this is over, that Joe Biden is the president-elect.
All right, Jonathan Karl, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lindsay.
And when we come back, 3 bodies discovered near the New Mexico border. And now the question, who are they and how did they die? This is police search for a suspect nicknamed Psycho. Thousands up in arms over tighter COVID restrictions, clashing with police. We'll tell you where. But up next, 2 crashes 5 months apart, hundreds dead. But now Boeing is once again allowed to...
Je vais rendre visite à mes amis marocains. Je vais rendre visite à mes amis marocains.
Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that.
Je vais rendre visite à mes amis marocains.
Just give it to me straight. Straightforward news. Straight to the heart of the story. ABC News. Straightforward. Friday nights, 90th Central. True crime. Cinematic. Real-life drama. Stunning. The unthinkable. Follow the clues.
Il adore parler de sa culture.
2020. Friday nights, 90th Central on ABC.
Ismael? David. This was your view.
Yes, mornings may look different these days, but where you start your day, where you spend your mornings, where you get connected to everything that's happening.
And face it, there's a whole lot happening in our world these days.
Where you get all the breaking news information of the day that helps you navigate through these times. That's why we're here.
Good morning, sunshine.
And making sure you start your day off with a smile and some sunshine.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America. Oh, how I would love saying that.
Anger is growing in Germany tonight. Protests in Berlin turned violent after thousands turned out to protest that nation's tighter COVID restrictions. Police used smoke grenades and water cannons to disperse the crowd. Many of the demonstrators clashing with police in riot gear. At least 200 people were arrested and 10 officers injured. Cleared for travel. That was the message from the Federal Aviation Administration to Boeing for its 737 MAX 20 months after it was grounded. The planes were banned from travel, of course, after those 2 fatal crashes. Faulty software and company and government failures were blamed. But tonight the question, what's next for the company and what exactly has changed? Gio Benitez has more.
Tonight, one of the longest aircraft groundings in history is over. After 20 months of scrutiny, the FAA approving the 737 MAX to return to the skies. Its name alone may conjure up these images. 2 crashes just 5 months apart, killing 346 people.
Based on all the activities that we've undertaken during the past 20 months and my personal experience flying the aircraft, I can tell you now that I am 100% comfortable with my family flying on it.
But for some of the families of those who died, that's not enough. We don't have our loved ones. Michael Stuma lost his daughter Sonia in one of the MAX crashes and is still demanding more transparency from both Boeing and the FAA. The culture of secrecy continues, and this is a plane that I would advise people to not fly in the future because we don't know if the fixes have done the job. In October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 was airborne for only 13 minutes before it plunged into the Java Sea off the coast of Indonesia. Less than 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed near Addis Ababa Airport just 6 minutes after takeoff, killing all. An automated flight control system called NCAS misfired multiple times in both crashes, leaving pilots struggling to regain control and altitude of the plane. The system was not mentioned in the pilot manual. Boeing not only fixing that flaw, but rewriting the entire flight computer software and requiring simulator training for all MAX pilots. Its CEO calling the MAX safer than the safest airplane flying. ABC News contributor Steve Ganyard has been following the changes since the beginning.
The FAA went back and mandated changes to the software, mandated changes to the way that the information was displayed in the cockpit, mandated changes to the way crews were trained. So this is a very different airplane. It's a much safer airplane.
And pilots like Captain Dennis Tager assuring the public he won't fly until he is confident in the fixes and has had training on the MAX.
You have to see the full training on it. We'll go fly that airplane, but we'll fly it on our terms because we don't fly any airplane unless we believe the airplane is safe, it has been vetted, and we are robustly trained.
And it will take the airlines several weeks to get pilots fully trained. And while airlines are eager to get these planes in the air, Boeing still has a long road ahead.
The MAX will be the most tested commercial airplane ever built. But the real challenge will be for Boeing, which has lost the trust of the flying public, regaining that trust and having the public believe that they have made an airplane that is finally safe and that people are comfortable on paying for and flying with their families.
American Airlines plans to be the first to fly the MAX commercially in 2020 on December 29th. United and Southwest will wait until later in 2021. Gio Benitez, ABC News, New York.
All about regaining that trust. Our thanks to Gio. Still ahead here on Prime. We're getting a clear picture of all the devastation from that monster storm, Hurricane Iota. The death toll is mounting and the rescues from flash flooding continues. The rapper on top of a bus waving a flamethrower. Spoiler alert, it did not end well for him. We'll explain. Canada had their version of Thanksgiving a few weeks back. What happened next in their fight against COVID? But first, our tweet of the day, like father, like son. Greg Anthony watching a game back with his son in the 90s. Tonight, he will watch him get drafted into the NBA. Good luck to all the future players on their big night.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying.
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington. A very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
Milan Airport, almost no one here. A lost flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle.
This is ground zero. It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind you. The first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards today, it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
At this point, we all know the concern from health officials. Thanksgiving spent with friends and family could lead to Christmas alone and fighting for your life in the hospital. Canada has done a much better job of containing this virus, and a few weeks back, they had their own version of Thanksgiving. Trevor has more on what happened next.
It's host to some of our most cherished traditions of food, friends, and family, but health experts say this year we'll have to celebrate Thanksgiving at a distance, but the consequences could be dire.
We have much higher rates of community prevalence, so we have an increased risk for everybody who is having an in-person Thanksgiving holiday gathering.
And we could have a troubling preview of what's to come from our neighbors to the north. Canada already celebrated their version of Thanksgiving the second Monday in October. After the holiday there, Canadian officials saw a sharp increase in cases, their highest infection rate since the spring, with experts saying family gatherings were at least partially to blame. And the U.S. could be serving up an even larger recipe for disaster. With several times more cases per capita than Canada, America's Thanksgiving week is still expected to be the busiest travel week since the pandemic started. AAA predicts just a 10% decrease from last year, meaning 50 million Americans are still expected to travel to Thanksgiving gatherings.
I would ask people to strongly consider if they do have kids coming home from college, family members traveling from elsewhere, that they don't get together for those in-person intergenerational gatherings.
Officials across the country now pleading for people to take that message to heart. So how can you still give thanks safely? The CDC says even in small groups, masks and social distancing are still important, and getting tested ahead of time to avoid wearing your mask will only give you a false sense of security. An outdoor meal is best, but if you have to be indoors, open up your windows. And while it might be tradition to serve food buffet style, don't share utensils when you're filling up your plate.
Our thanks to Trevor for those tips, and we still have lots to get to here on Prime. 2 highly effective potential COVID vaccines, but what now? If they are approved, how will they get to the general public? One former military official explains this is going to be a far harder challenge than advertised. Have you heard about the Genius Dog Challenge? Perhaps you haven't. Well, we'll tell you all about it, plus the scientific research behind it. Plus, meet the 51-year-old mother who gave birth to her own granddaughter. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
What you're seeing right now is part of the high wall. Procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
The fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
This is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch NBC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop, original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
Americans, you're on the ground in Iraq. 18,000 tons. The top of the sea. Ismail, David. Ground zero from Hurricane Michael. You can see just hole after hole. This was your view.
Thank you for the
Long lines of cars in cities from coast to coast. People waiting to get tested for COVID-19 as the demand for testing soars.
I passed the 2-hour mark an hour ago.
Labs struggling to keep up, but overnight the FDA approved the first at-home rapid test, which experts say is a step in the right direction. Also a sign of hope, Pfizer's vaccine moving along at lightning speed, with new data showing it's more than 95% effective for all ages, races, and ethnicities. The drug maker expected to request FDA emergency authorization in a matter of days. The U.S. seeing its highest caseload since the pandemic began.
We do need to close our schools for the coming days.
New York City's entire public school system, the largest in the country, temporarily shutting down again, beginning Thursday as cases surge, moving exclusively to remote learning instead.
We intend to come back as quickly as possible.
Hurricane Iota now dissipating over Central America.
That number of deaths now at 26 across 6 different countries. Iota battered the Nicaragua's Caribbean coast and flooded parts of the Honduras that were still underwater from Hurricane Eta. Homes and buildings were badly damaged and trees were uprooted. Iota has weakened, but it is still causing catastrophic flash flooding. The number of deaths could grow as officials assess the damage.
A federal judge in New York agreed to drop drug charges against Mexico's defense minister.
The office stands behind the case, acting U.S. Attorney Seth Ducharme said, but he told the judge there was a broader interest in the U.S.-Mexico relationship that caused Attorney General Barr to drop the charges against former Mexican Defense Minister Salvador Cienfuegos Cepeda. Cienfuegos had been accused of taking bribes to protect a cartel that flooded the U.S. with illicit drugs. The judge said she had no reason to doubt the decision was made as a matter of foreign policy and the determination that Mexico sincerely wants to pursue an investigation. Mexican authorities have yet to say whether they'll prosecute.
A rapper caught on camera blasting a flamethrower, yes, a flamethrower, onto an MTA bus in Brooklyn, has turned himself into police. The video posted on social media showed rapper Dupree G.O.D. jumping on the roof of the bus and shooting the flames into the air. The MTA says there were 25 people on that bus, but no one was injured. He says the incident was part of a video shoot and no one was ever in danger. In a statement, the MTA called the incident absurd, dangerous, and just plain stupid. Police are investigating after other videos were found showing Dupree G.O.D. using the flamethrower.
Border Collies are competing in the Genius Dog Challenge to determine the world's smartest dog. Scientists in Hungary say that the challenge is part of a bigger project to learn how dogs perceive human language. Because of coronavirus, the clever canines are participating virtually. The winner will be announced next month.
Welcome back. Police in Colorado have a mystery on their hands. What happened to 3 people found near the New Mexico border? Police are now searching for this man right here, Andre Jordan Burroughs. His nickname is Psycho. He is considered armed and dangerous and wanted in connection with the 3 deaths. Police say it could take weeks to identify the victims in this case. Now back to those hopeful COVID-19 vaccine results from drug makers Pfizer and Moderna. What comes next? Here's ABC's Bob Woodruff with the latest installment of Vaccine Watch.
As we hurtle toward a vaccine, two companies, Moderna and Pfizer, now revealing promising data that their vaccines could be up to 95% effective.
This is a really strong step forward to where we want to be.
Pfizer, along with its partner BioNTech, announced just this morning that they will ask the FDA for authorization within days.
We plan to submit these documents to the FDA end of the
Il m'a dit, ici, les loyers sont très chers.
Said it will apply in the coming weeks, but they potentially have one key advantage: logistics.
Our vaccine appears to be able to be distributed in much more traditional infrastructure, so traditional refrigerators and freezers. It doesn't require dry ice or the types of ultra cool distribution that have been reported with the Pfizer vaccine.
Experts say Moderna's vaccine may be easier to distribute in rural areas, locations which may not be suited to store Pfizer's vaccine.
Some of those cold chain storage issues that people have brought up with the Pfizer vaccine could be alleviated by this vaccine, just as good use for places that may not have access to that ultra cold storage.
Supplies will be limited at first to only 20 million people by the end of the year. And the first wave of people to be vaccinated will be frontline workers and those at high risk. They likely won't be able to pick which vaccine they get.
At the present time, we're going to be really limited in the number of doses, so people who get offered one should feel quite happy about that, I would think.
Although these two companies are the first to release the results, there could be more coming. Nearly 50 companies in human trials worldwide, many using different technologies.
Well, let's talk about the different kinds of vaccines that are being developed.
There's 4 main approaches that are currently being researched for COVID-19 vaccine. The first is what I kind of describe as a traditional approach. These are inactive or weakened viruses.
Il m'a dit, ici, les loyers sont très chers.
Vector approach, and that uses a different horse to get genetic material into your body. The third approach that's being researched is called a protein subunit approach, and that basically injects that spike protein directly into your body to produce that immune response. The fourth way is potentially one of the most exciting ways. It's a brand new technology, and that approach is called messenger RNA, mRNA. This is Pfizer and Moderna. It gives your body instructions to produce that critical spike protein, and that triggers an immune response, which creates those antibodies to fight off